Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to India Game Changer. Today should be a great one. Today we are joined by Sharmin Ali, the founder and the CEO at Instoried. Sharmin, thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing, by the way?
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me. I am doing wonderful as always.
As always,
How are you?
I could not be better. I walked into the office today, so it's Songkran in Thailand, and I had completely forgotten about that because, like you, I take off very little time, and I literally just walked into the office. All the lights were off. It was dark. There was nobody here. The normal coffee machine was not even ready, so I went downstairs and bought myself a cup of coffee. But otherwise, I'm doing amazing. I want to talk to you about building stuff from scratch, but before we do that, I don't really know that much about you. I want to get some of your background for some context, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm an Indian,
Not
born and brought
shocking.
up in. You know what? Not too many people know this about me. I am half Indian, one fourth Iranian, and one fourth French, by the way, as in from my parents' side. But then, yes, I think Indian side is the more dominant one. So, yes, born and brought up in India. Studied engineering, although I don't take too much pride in saying that because I've never really done anything close to what I've studied. Then started my career back in 2010 in the US, actually, because got a job there in the management consulting decision sciences space, analytics as they call it, worked on the Wall Street for about 4.5 to 5 years,
Okay.
worked with a number of Fortune companies. And then I realized that I was just helping the rich get richer, wasn't adding too much value to my own life. So I decided to quit, came back to India to, follow my passion. And I've always wanted to start something of my own. So that's when this entrepreneurial journey began. And my first company essentially was in the media space. The plan was to build India's very own Netflix. And this was back in 2016.
Why does everybody want to be in the movie business?
I think it's very attractive.
You think
Yeah,
so?
yeah. Showbiz. Oh, yes, of course it is. And also because, when it's videos, right?
Yeah.
So uh, because there's audio and video both. So it's way more interactive and way more intuitive, much easier to connect with people. So yes, I think videos definitely are the best possible way to connect with people, which is an irony because I'm in the tech space.
I was gonna
but
say, and
but
I'm
yeah.
audio based, right? So we can see each other now,
Oh wow.
and
Yes.
almost everything I do is audio. I find audio to be really intimate, right? Because when you're watching a video, you have to be paying attention. I have to be able to look at you, right? And like you
Correct.
said, video can be super interactive, but I also feel like some people are not appropriate for video because they don't know how to behave in front of a camera, right? There's a lot of this kind of stuff,
Oh,
a lot of this kind
absolutely.
of stuff. Notice I'm not saying what I'm doing because nobody can see me, right? But there's an intimacy in the imagination behind
Mm,
audio. And I
audio,
think it's the
yes.
same thing for the writing. And I want to get to that in a second, right? But I think that there's something really intimate about looking at something, reading it, and trying to figure out what it means and why it has meaning. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It can have multiple meanings, but then the tone and the emotion behind that, and that's where we also come from. The tone and the emotion behind that is basically what sets the perspective and things with the reader. So absolutely, I think writing and audio, they're very very intimate. But again, depends on how the person perceives it.
So this perception, though, really gets to the heart of, I think, what In Story does, if I understand this at all. What is it
Absolutely.
about, and again, just help me here, right? But what is it about writing with empathy or writing with caring or just being empathetic at all that makes
Mhm.
such a big difference that then at the end of the day it drives more engagement, right? Just talk to me about this empathy thing first, right? And do you consider yourself an empathetic person? Like, where does this come from?
So yes, absolutely. I think you're bang on right that you cannot be running a company or doing anything which is based on empathy unless and until you don't feel and connect with people the same way,
I think.
right? Um, So yes, absolutely, I am very empathetic. But I think more than humans, I am a huge animal lover. I'm a vegetarian. But I think I'm the most empathetic towards animals. I have a dog and two cats at home, so I think my biggest love are animals any day. So very very empathetic towards them. But also, the thing is that if you look at evolution as such, right? Evolution has wired us human beings to be more emotional than logical, right? I mean, all of our decision making is driven by emotions and not by logic. So we human beings are emotional people. So when you talk about emotions, there is definitely an some level of empathy quotient attached with it, and especially in times of crisis like the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I think, needless to say, that the only way to connect with people is to be more empathetic and kind. So when it comes to my company, I think timing really worked amazingly well. We were able to spot the opportunity in this adversity, and that's when things happen. That because the world needs to be a much more empathetic place, and people need to connect better, more empathetically with each other in order to resonate well with their audiences. And that is what we are exactly cashing on. So we've built a tool around that.
Yeah, but you're building into a few different things at the same time, right? There's an idea, and again, tell me where I'm wrong here, that writing as a thing is still important, whether it's in the digital format or in the physical format, that's still important. So that's one decision. The other decision is that you can impact writing using artificial intelligence and machine learning and understand what's embedded inside the writing by analyzing that writing before it gets sent out to people. And another part of this, notice I didn't say the last part, is that if you write in a particular way, that then you can change the way the reader actually feels about the thing that they're writing. How did all these stuff come together for you, right? Because I believe really strongly as an entrepreneur myself that there's no such thing as an epiphany. You don't just wake up one day, shake your head out, have a cup of coffee and go, okay, I'm going to build a company that does writing that's empathetic because I think that matters and I'm going to use artificial intelligence. How does all this stuff get developed over time in your mind? Yeah.
Right. So, lots of things. So, when I was in the US, and, I was working with these Fortune 100 companies,
Yep.
I had a bunch of experiences dealing with clients. And, I mean, of course, a lot of learnings in those years. But then I think the biggest thing that occurred to me was when I went to Harvard to, study about neuromarketing, because neuromarketing was something that was always very very exciting to me. I mean, I had been reading a lot. I'm a voracious reader. So that's when I found out things that all the conventional forms of marketing are now long dead and gone. If you have to be able to connect with people, you have to hit them exactly where it needs to be hit. And that is that, because we are emotional beings, you have to connect with them at an emotional level. So what I did was that I went to Harvard to, study about neuromarketing to understand this a little better. So I ended up talking to, I think, almost 500 plus neuromarketers and neuroscientists, as they prefer calling themselves. And those wonderful PhD people, they, put all these nodes into my brain, and that I was the lab rat, basically. And that's when I ended up understanding that how our brain reacts to situations, and the best responses happen when, it is when there is an emotional situation. And that's when we figured that all of the decision making, from a customer standpoint, is actually determined by the set of emotions that we human beings connect the most with. And turns out, after years and years of their experimenting with, a bunch of lab rats like myself, they figured that, okay, there are five main emotions that we human beings connect the most with. And the number one being FOMO, fear of missing out. So anything to do with fear, or an alarming situation is what we connect the most with. So fear, anger, joy, sadness, and surprise. These are the five main emotions that we human beings are able to connect the most with. So we figured that, okay, these five emotions is what any marketer also needs in order to be able to, sell their product better. So that was the starting point. And of course, other than that, there are three main, tones or opinions, as one might call it, which, any marketer would want to set when it comes to, setting an opinion. So positive, negative, or neutral. Any writer would have one of these tones. So that is where the whole thing actually occurred to me that, okay, right now, all of the content generation activity that is happening globally, it's very manual, very intuition driven. There is no such tech driven approach which can essentially help you gauge what is the, tone or the emotion of your content looking like. So the whole idea was to help people make their content generation activity, their process, much more intuitive, much more productive, using a very, as they call it, data-driven, scalable, and repeatable approach
Right.
using technology. So that's exactly where it occurred that, okay, enough of doing this manually, we need to get technological assistance.
What's the balance between, do you know what I mean? Because we could take a machine and give it a paintbrush, right? And then tell it to sort of recreate Monet like 1,000, a million times, right? And then give it an idea how to machine learning, then how to create its own stuff. But what's the balance between doing something with artificial intelligence and machine learning and an inspired person actually writing great stuff, right? Because it's got to be somewhere in the middle, no? Like, I believe technology augments people, doesn't replace them or supplements them. What's the balance there from an in-storied perspective about how this gets used? Does that make sense?
So, first of all, this is a great question because this is something that I'm often asked by a lot of people, that are you trying to replace a
No,
copywriter? Are
that's
you
not what I
telling
asked.
that,
That's not what I asked because I don't think that's possible, right? I want to know how it
yeah,
augments, yeah?
right, how it augments? Exactly. So, there are a few things that one needs to look at. So, how did we even come to this conclusion that technology can actually assist or, augment the entire content generation exercise? So, first of all, what we did is that, we conducted interviews globally in, every possible country, at least the known countries, with over 1,000 plus, content marketers and, content writers, content creators, to basically understand what are the challenges that they face. 90% of them said that their biggest challenge was when they talk about editing. Editing is their biggest challenge. When you talk about content writing isn't really that big a challenge because they tend to, do a lot of research before
Right.
they create the content. Or, most of these guys with an MPhil in literature, they are the ones who get the most offended when you talk about technology assisting them, with content generation, which is fine. I understand, because their entire life has been surrounded about content. So when you tell them that assisting you with content creation, they're like, what are you saying? Really, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. So the entire exercise here is about making the entire content generation process more productive. How do you get the whole editing cycle to, to help you save time? And how do you get, because also the thing is that what most of them said is that, when they write, they tend to go haywire. They don't know how to stick to a certain number of words. And what occurs to them during editing, and, most of their bosses are like, dude, you had to create 500 words,
Right.
but look, you've gone to 800. Now, how do you know that which 300 words to, actually cut? And then you might actually end up losing the essence
Sure.
of the entire content generation activity. So these are some of their biggest challenges. So we thought that what if technology could replace that? You know, so editing is where the biggest assistance is required in order to make the whole process more productive, more efficient, and help them save time. That is the assistance that InStoried is trying to bring in.
Got it. So let's say I'm a content creator, and let's make it the simplest example. I find in storied. I really just want to run through back to front process so I can understand exactly how it works, right? What do I have to give it? What do I do when it's working on stuff? And like, what's the output that I get? And do you know what I mean? Like, how does it work front to back?
Right. So
And
very
who's going to
simple.
use it? Who's going to use it as well?
Right. I think I should answer that first. Who's going to use it, and then how it works. So basically, anyone who is creating content. When I say content, it can be, something as basic as a blog, or maybe an Instagram caption, because now everyone's going Instagram. All of the marketing is now short form. So, be it an Instagram caption or a Twitter post, or, a Facebook post, anything to do about, content creation, or it can even be a love letter for that matter. Gone are those days, yes.
No, not
But
really. But anyway, go ahead.
now it's the Tindler Swindler world. So,
God, that's
yeah.
so terrible. But no, go ahead, please.
So, anything to do about content, any kind of content essentially. And the way we are also looking at even chats, as in be it WhatsApp chats, or, be it SMSs, anything to do with, let's say, people working at a BPO, wherein, they have to chat, text-based chatting with, their customers. So any kind of chat. So what we are trying to look at is basically how do you get the whole chatting experience, the whole connecting with your customer, that experience, much more seamless, wherein you're able to gauge what is the emotion that your customer is experiencing. And that's what you capitalize on. And then get recommendations around that. So that was the whole idea that, if I am this chat person at let's say Swiggy, and
Right.
there is this person who hasn't got their food in time, and he or she is going insane. So, if there was a back-end technology which could tell you that, dude, you know what, the person's losing it. So instead of, just explaining it to them, why is it taking so long? It would be nice if you could use a certain few words which could, help them calm down, tone down a little bit. So those recommendations again to, basically help you make those judgments sooner. These are just broadly the use cases that I'm explaining. So, that is the whole idea. Now, how does it work? To answer that, what we've done is that now anything to do with technology, right? There has to be a user interface, of course, right? So there are multiple ways of bringing that user interface in order for anyone to use it, to enable the whole usage. So what we did initially was that we built a web app. So you just log on to app.instory.com, and using that, what will happen is that you would get to a login page, wherein just how you log into your Facebook, you would just log into the app. Simple. And as soon as you log in, you would get the editor window, wherein what you can do is that you would just start writing content, just how you write on any platform. It is as simple as writing on your text window, SMS, or WhatsApp window.
Yep.
So as soon as you start writing, the tool would dynamically start throwing these responses. Now, when I use the word dynamic, what I mean to say is that you don't have to wait for your content to be, completed and then click a few buttons for it to analyze that, because that would be a static window. What happens here is that as soon as you start writing, you would see on the right-hand side of your window that, okay, there is some activity happening, and then a few numbers are popping up. So that is because the whole computation, it's, dynamically going on as you're creating content. It'll throw those numbers that, okay, you know what? These are your tones. These are your emotions. You can play around. And, as you want to see the recommendation that, okay, which are the words which are exuding those tones and those emotions, all of that. It's a very intuitive, very, very interactive window wherein you can be playing around. And those are the responses. Basically, when I say responses, it'll tell you what's the tone, what's the emotion, if your content is original or, has it been plagiarized, how is your caption looking like, what kind of words do you need to use in order to make your caption much more interactive. So, a lot of these things, of course, lots of those features. So that is one way in which you can use that. Other than that, now we are launching a Chrome extension wherein, any platform that you might be using, be it your Microsoft Word or, your Google Doc or your WordPress, any other CMS that you have, just download the Chrome extension and, on the right-hand side, you would start seeing those pop-ups. So that is how it would be enabled there.
Really interesting. So in a way, it almost works like Grammarly works for just writing in grammar, right, and word recommendations.
Yeah.
Is there a way to I mean, if it's doing this dynamically, if it's doing it in real time, it requires a whole bunch of compute. I presume it's happening on the cloud and not locally, which makes it even more interesting. Are there
Exactly.
use cases for this in chatbots as well? So I type something in, the chatbot needs to respond, but I want it to respond to me in a way that's not like, hey, Michael, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard in my whole life, but it says something a lot nicer than that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. So we haven't reached that stage yet. Because first of all, AI is no magic. It is all artificial, it's not real. Most people forget that and they're like, okay, oh my God, can it do this? Can it do that? Can it throw these responses in real time? Yes, it can, but it needs a lot of training in the back end.
Right.
So we still haven't gone to the whole chatbot space. That's exactly where I was talking about the whole Swiggy use case.
Yep.
But that's where we intend to get to that, how do you get those responses in real time? And when I say responses, I mean they have to be meaningful. They have to make sense, right? It shouldn't be like, you know what, Michael, this is such a dumb question, like you said. It has to understand why you're asking this and give you contextual responses.
Right.
So far, done is that all of the responses that we give, they have been trained from a marketing standpoint. So yes, the tool is smart enough to, understand the context in which you have written a certain piece of content, and it gives you recommendations accordingly. It will not change the context. That has been possible because we've used about 30 million plus data points in the back end to train the tool. But for us to get to a chatbot space, we will probably need like 100 million data points, wherein the data would essentially be like chat-based data, short form content that, hey, hi, John, what's up? Hi, this, this is what I'm doing. Do you think it's making sense? As in like those one word responses and things like that. So
I understand.
the end that would go in the back end would be much different. But yes, we eventually want to get there, wherein daily chats that you have on WhatsApp or on any messaging platform, they become seamless when it comes to, a tool responding to you.
Yeah, and when I think about sort of voice recognition, I think about a company. I had a conversation with Ravi Sarogi about a year and a half ago, who runs a company called Unifor, and what they do using similar methodology is they want to give scripting and stuff like that in real time for like customer service agents to be able to talk to people in combination with a tool like InStoried, which in real time at some point with compute, again, increasing exponentially and with access to cloud, right? So the throughput to the cloud, just getting so much higher and so much faster, being able to then change the tone of those responses in real time, I think would be super cool. Anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting application of this. And again, I want to test and see how this works, right? I talk a lot and I listen to people talk, and it would be neat to have my own thoughts be able to transfer into a more empathetic tone, although I do feel like, if I do say so myself, I'm pretty empathetic. Do you score this stuff in real time? In other words, is there a score happening in the background when you're taking these 30 million or 100 million data points that you have, and the more times you do this, the more data you get? Are you constantly scoring and then iterating how it generates what that content should look like?
Oh, absolutely. This is all happening in real time, So now the system has gone into that auto learning mode, wherein more the content that it encounters, the better it becomes, because it's auto learning. So it knows that, okay, so basically it is comparing any content that it gets with the content that it has been trained on. Right. So it that this is what is positive, this is what is negative, this is what is neutral. And then accordingly, it starts compartmentalizing the content that it receives. That, okay, you know what, this is what positive looks like. So yes, now you have to go into this bucket. So I mean, I'm just talking like simple layman terms. Something like that is what is going on at the back end. So it's now gone into that auto learning mode. And of course, we have a bunch of data scientists in-house who are, continuously doing all of the quality checks to ensure that, yes, the tool runs. Again, validating the fact that only AI is not enough. There is always some human intervention required.
How big is the InStoried team overall?
Right now, we are 40 people.
Okay.
Soon to be 70. Yeah, by this year, we should be at least 70 plus. Yeah.
So you've raised a decent amount of money. You did a Series A, that was $10 million announced? Do I have that right?
Yes, correct.
What was the basis of that raise? Was it something that you've been thinking about for a while, or were you approached in reverse by investors who saw what you were doing, if that makes sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes, absolutely it does. So both actually, because even I was looking at raising money because these techies are super expensive, I tell you. You know, they're just so bloody expensive. And, also because we were looking at expanding in the US market. So, we needed a couple of $1 million to,
Yeah.
invest into marketing. So yes, of course. And also because we were planning to go the B2C route. Initially, we were only B2B. So B2C, it means that you need to spend money, right?
Yeah. Marketing.
Yes. So both actually, there were a bunch of investors who were chasing us, and we were also looking at raising money. So actually, it so happened that unlike a lot of other people, our Series A raise was much easier. The first investor that we spoke with, in just 3 rounds of conversations, we got the term sheet. So I did not go reach out to many more. But then things fell in place, worked out. Yeah, great.
What does expansion to the US look like to you? And, I have this theory that I do say a lot, and, nobody succeeds alone, right? So you can't just like drop your own people there. Like, what does a great partnership look like to you in the United States? And also, are there challenges specifically for a company coming out of India, which is a
Mm-hmm.
completely different market, which in and of itself is so dynamic, right? But also, if you go 100 miles or 200 miles away from where you are in India, you have different language, different culture, different food and stuff like that.
Right.
But now if you go 12,000 miles away to the US, like how do you manage all of those differences in culture and stuff when you look for great partnerships in a completely different market?
Right. So yes, you're absolutely right. Lots of challenges, especially for a company which is in the deep tech space, coming out of India,
Mm-hmm.
because very, very different markets. Indians don't want to pay, and Americans have a lot of money, but they don't know how to spend it. you know, so it's a different ball game altogether. So we have thought of all of these things, and what we've learned the hard way is that partnerships, you need to get those references, those partners who will help you expand into a completely different geography, people who understand that space. And having the right set of advisors, the right connections,
Yep.
who can help you basically sell. So I don't have any intentions of building a tech team in the US, because I strongly believe that India has the best tech talent. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
most of them have on some sort of a brain drain and have moved to the US. But, I mean, India any day has the best tech talent. So tech team will always remain in India. But having said that, I think Americans are the best when it comes to sell. I mean, selling is, I think, top priority for any startup at our stage. And so what we are doing is that we are building a phenomenal sales team in the US using the advisory people that we have. Now we have two incredible CXOs of two incredible unicorn companies, who have joined us on our advisory board. So they are the ones who are essentially helping us set up the whole sales team, because they really understand how, as in how it works in the US market, and how to get those sales guys. So I think partnerships is definitely number one,
Yep.
because any company will have incredible tech, but their biggest challenge will be to how to sell better. And for me, I strongly believe that you need to be able to raise money continuously in order to support and get more resources on board, because it's either the funding money or it is a continuous influx of sales. Now, for someone in the deep tech SaaS space, continuous influx of money through sales is quite a
There's the,
challenge, because
yeah, there's a mismatch in timing, particularly for a SaaS company in early stage revenues, right? Revenues are 3 to 5 years out generally.
absolutely. So, you need to spend a lot on marketing. So how do you spend that money? That money has to come through investment. So, for all of these reasons, I think US is the biggest market, and getting the smartest salespeople who can really connect emotionally with your customers and go like bang, 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 that, okay, this is it, done. talk to 100 people, close at least 20, get 10 to, pay money.
Yeah.
So that's what I think Americans are very good at doing. So, yeah.
I understand. Can you talk to me a little bit about the Global Emerging Markets announcement that was made recently? I'm just trying to understand the details here. Why make an announcement about a specific amount of money for a shares subscription facility that's going to happen at some point? I mean, even it's post-IPO money, right? So does that money, do they give you money today? How does that work? I just don't understand this.
So yes, of course, it is a capital commitment and not an investment. So when I say capital commitment, basically what it means is that, so we plan to go public in the next, as in like 2 to 3 years. So when we go public, the thing is that, they would be at the valuation decided at that point in time by these bankers and stuff. GEM would be essentially, liable to give us that sum of money at the valuation decided, which basically means that, if we go the SPAC route, let's say, so the company that would be acquiring us, which would essentially be then, going IPO, GEM would pull in 200 million to buy stakes of the existing investors at the valuation decided by that target company. So it's basically a commitment for the future that, so we know that no matter what happens, they cannot back out. They would be putting in that 200 million, which I think is a great thing, and it definitely deserved an announcement, because when you say this, then raising money in the future, getting more investors to, trust you, because there is this one massive VC which is committed a good amount of money.
Yep.
So there is that whole trust factor that comes in, because they have a good name in the market. It becomes much smoother.
I got it. What's the benefit of going the SPAC route? So SPAC, for people that don't know, is special purpose acquisition company. So it's not like InStoried itself is IPOing per se. It's merging into almost like a shell company that's already listed and then getting acquired by that, but then kind of taking that company over. What's the benefit to a company like InStoried to do a SPAC as opposed to just doing an initial public offering?
So, the most basic thing, an IPO is a lot of pain in my ass. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you and everybody else. But yeah, I get it. I worked on an equity desk, so I completely understand this. Go ahead.
So IPO is a lot of pain. SPAC, on the other hand, first of all, yes, now it's been quite it's doing well in the US. There are different ways of looking at it. Different people have different opinions. But the general thing has been like a lot of people have been choosing to go the SPAC route in the US. It's not really a very well-known term in India. People don't understand this in India.
Right.
India is still more traditional. And they want to go the IPO way. But in the US, SPAC has been a big thing, and a lot preferred when it comes to a number of VCs. And when someone has given you a commitment worth a 200 million, it definitely makes sense, because then there is a sure shot commitment, right? Because you have signed the agreement, so now they cannot back out, which basically gives the existing investors and the future incoming investors a lot of confidence.
Got it. So
when we got this offer, when we got this opportunity, I was like, why not? Why? Am I stupid? No. So definitely yes. Plus, I've always wanted to go public. So I was like, this is once in a lifetime opportunity, and these guys are phenomenal to work with. Very, very, entrepreneur friendly. So I was like, okay, why not? The ball is in my court. I will definitely take it.
I'll definitely take it. Okay, well, that's awesome. And it was really great to talk to you. I really want to thank you, Sharmin Ali, the founder and CEO at InStoried. That was really interesting. Cannot thank you enough for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was amazing, Mike. I enjoyed talking to you.